all of the madness they put in us did create a very large awakening, which is a big problem for them, hence the censorship. So it's all on the razor's edge now. They made a stab, they overplayed their hand, they didn't quite get there, and the people have been awakened, lots of people. So now the game is really on, I would say.
Hey guys, I got a positive message today. So I'm going to share the last segment from one of my shows in the UK last week. And this one goes through some of the current happenings in the world of geopolitics and these totalitarians we're dealing with, namely Bilderberg in this case. And then I'm going to go through how there's great hope for the future and how we actually fight back against these totalitarian structures.
Now, Bilderberg, I'm going to finish with 2024, they're meeting. This is the top of these kind of sociopaths. War, AI, and more war. The 2024 Bilderberg agenda. They are salivating for war because of the money and the use of AI and the power it gives them and toppling regimes. It's just, they are disgusting. They really are. And this blog just the other day from the great Dr. Jakob Nordengård, he goes through their 2025 plans. They're in Stockholm. And he jokes about them being like witches at black masses, which they kind of are. And they're all talking about AI-powered war machine. And then, of course, we had the attack. Who's hosting the event? Of course, mega bankers. Always the bankers, the Wallenberg family. They're in weapons and banking. Huge. And we have, of course, Peter Thiel. You might be familiar with the AI guy, Trump's guy. I didn't know. In 2007, he was a recent young global leader. And he attended his first Bilderberg, which is the next level up, right? A meeting. A year later, he started to fund the American Friends of Bilderberg, together with elders like David Rockefeller, Henry Kissinger, the warmonger. And since 2012, he has served as director in Bilderberg's inner sanctum with a capacity to choose guests and set the agenda. So Thiel's done good. He's right up at the top. And the inner core is getting dominated now by big tech moguls. So if you're kind of wondering, well, big tech versus the old families versus CIA and the Rockefellers, they all tend to merge together. Whether they're frenemies or alliances, there's only one core of power in the West, and this is it. So you get drawn to it if you're big and you have big ideas, and if you have zero conscience, no ethics, right? And you don't care about truth. So I'm going to fly through this to get to the good bit. Again, Microsoft's research and strategy officer, Demis Hassabis from Google DeepMind. These are huge names, and they're all in there. Mark Rutte, the Secretary General, you know, and you got a whole bunch of US Army commanders. So it's all the usual suspects. This was their agenda. I won't go through it, but depopulation and migration is in there, as you'd expect. Proliferation. They want to proliferate arms in Europe, and you know, all of Europe has been asked to spend a ton of money on arms because Putin's coming or something. And geopolitics, energy and critical minerals. They need the minerals and energy for the huge electrical needs and for the AI monster they want to try and build. So that's become important. And defense, of course, yada yada, all security and war. And is there anything in here? Oh, Oscar Stenström, a former Secretary of State of Sweden, where they're doing this, and he managed to help get Sweden into NATO, which is another key thing that happened a while back. Not everyone noticed it. And now is employed by the big bankers, the Wallenbergs. Right? So straight from politics, in with the big boys. And he was in charge of this meeting about Sweden and weapons. A few days later, Swedish government presented a defence agreement, supported by everyone, of course, all the yes men, like in Agenda 21, they all sign off, added 300 billion euro to the budget of the armed forces by, of course, taking loans. And will I say any more? They really are disgusting because they laugh at us. Anyone with intellect, anyway. We know to a certainty, and all my geopolitical and hedge fund people in Maverick Org and groups I'm in worldwide, super smart people, incredible knowledge in geopolitics, they all laugh openly at the idea that Putin would move into Europe. It's so absurd, guys, if you don't know all the stuff. It's a farce. And what did this senior person, the foreign minister, say? Gaslighting us. It's about our children and grandchildren not having to learn to speak Russian. That is laughing at us. And sadly, there's many normal people who know nothing who will think, oh, God, the Russians are coming. You know, this is how they do it. This is how they do it. Mark Carney, I told you, come up again. The guy is destroying Canada as we speak. WEF trustee at the highest level, and he's hosting this super banker meeting, and he's up to his neck in Bilderberg. And of course, they're all talking about securing critical minerals, supply chains, AI, war, and that means there'll be more proxy wars, more countries flipped, more resources of other people stolen because our guys are on the rampage. You know, why is this important? Without understanding history and origins, like we just went through, we're cattle. They all understand the history, they know all the stuff. We have to know it too, so we can have conversations and we're informed. Without understanding mass formation, I'd say, how all our friends and neighbours go insane based on propaganda, we end up being disempowered like cattle. We need to understand psychology too, that's the second talk. And the oligarchies I referred to have two primary synergistic strategies. The first one is obvious, they want global power, control and money. That's as old as humanity. But the second one is they want to divide the masses. It's extremely important. And I think that's the one we need to be cognizant of and find ways to help people understand what's happening without being divided, and maybe choosing not to engage in a conversation that can get very strident and cause division, and maybe back off. You know, we need to convert cleverly. This joke I loved because this is a Wall Street guy. Do you remember Occupy Wall Street? It was a very interesting time. At the time we were watching it in my corporate, the managers, it was fascinating that the people had actually now finally realized who was causing all the trouble. It was the banking. And they went after them. And they got scared. But then they pulled a nasty trick, the oldest trick in the book. And you can see this joke. The Wall Street guys, the bankers just say, just fund them and introduce them to identity politics. And that's what happened. So the NGOs and all these groups, they just poured money at them and said, hey, we want to help you. And when the money came in, bad people within the groups rose, and then they refocused onto gay or lesbian or whatever. Just give them anything. Just give them something, give them money, and they'll just go away. It's sad, but that's how they do it. So I think this activism and all and fighting with politicians, I'm not so sure is going to get us what we want. And that's it, the latter goal. So the good news in general, COVID, they didn't get what they wanted, which was universal vaccination and digital ID. They failed. But all of the madness they put in us did create a very large awakening, which is a big problem for them, hence the censorship. So it's all on the razor's edge now. They made a stab, they overplayed their hand, they didn't quite get there, and the people have been awakened, lots of people. So now the game is really on, I would say. It sounds negative when I go through all of them and their money and power, but they can be overturned once we get enough people working together. And there's loads of groups to support who are doing good work. Now, I used to show this slide, my way of pushing back, create and propagate counter-narratives to all their nonsense. Like Iran now, if you know what it's about, you can say, well, you do know the CIA and MI6 basically messed up that country for the last 50 years. Right? It's not about bad guys over there and we're the good guys. We did most of that. It's a powerful thing to say to people that stops them. Convert cleverly, good conversations, and we'll talk about communication in the second talk. Avoid all divide and conquer issues. Don't engage with the people who want to fight. And I'd say you're pretty good, you guys, at not engaging in that nonsense. And live the counter narrative. Now that's the key. Use cash, buy local, create local teams, network together, create real world, real people groups all over the place. Yours is here, fantastic. Create them everywhere and have them link in with each other and cross-pollinate. That is the way forward, okay? This video I want you to watch. We'll send a link afterwards maybe. I loved it back in 21, Academy of Ideas. They're brilliant and it's so good. But I took some slides for it from the end. How can totalitarianism be prevented? If it's induced in the early stages of mass psychosis, where we are, can the effects be reversed? Well, yes, every person is important. Every single human who disengages from the nonsense. I mean, Solzhenitsyn says it. The only thing that's required of any person is to not partake in the lie. And Solzhenitsyn knew the power of individuals saying, no, that's nonsense. I'm not partaking. I've got my own people here. I'm not playing that nonsense. The power of that as the numbers grow is huge because it gives other people a motivation to perhaps do so as well. So that's huge. Yeah, I won't read this, but Carl Jung said it. Collective psychosis, totalitarianism, the person who regains their soul is the beacon of hope for others. And if you get enough numbers, it begins to grow, like it did in all of history. Truth they hate, truth is crucial. The more people speaking the truth, the more these guys have a problem, as you well know. Hence the censorship they're really pushing that. Humor, it's another funny point, if you pardon the pun. But the use of humor and ridiculing these people, they don't have any humor because they're kind of sociopaths. They find it unnerving when people are laughing at them in any numbers at all. And it's much harder to censor pushback that's couched in humor and taking the mickey, if you will. So that's a powerful thing. And Václav Havel, and I know I'm over time, parallel structures. So he became president of Czechoslovakia and he lived through the totalitarianism, and he noticed that parallel structures springing up, people working together, knowing about the problem and not engaging, it was more powerful than even political lobbying in their history of their country. The bad guys really worry about groups springing up everywhere of people who won't engage in their nonsense. They really need everyone to engage in their nonsense. And ultimately, if you get enough numbers doing this all over the place and beginning to coalesce, here and there, ultimately the bad guys are kind of pushed back into their slime. So that is the hope. I'm not saying it's easy. I know it's very tough. I won't read that, but it basically says what I just said, essentially. Yeah, ultimately, if we can grow it enough, you end up with a whole alternative world of sorts, and they're left with their disgusting lies-based nonsense. And really, that's how you beat them. Oh, there's the Eye of Sauron. I love it. Yes. Good old Tolkien. But that's essentially it. And, in the second talk, we'll talk about mental strength, resilience, and communication with people, and completely different topics, so no more negative stuff. But hopefully people resonate with that. I don't have all the answers. Oh, that was the last one. Tyranny like hell is not easily conquered, yet we have this consolation with us that the harder the conflict, and this one is hard, the more glorious the triumph. And that's the way I live my life, and it's the way you have to live. It's the only way. It's all to play for in this fourth turning. Thank you.
That'll do it, folks. Hope you enjoyed that primer on what the bad guys are up to currently. And of course, the all-important, how do we oppose them and beat them? And if you'd like to take advantage of all my experience on critical thinking and mental strength over the last few decades, actually, you can simply go to ivorcumminsworkshops.com, and there's a double bill of critical thinking and mental strength and resilience coming up next Thursday and the Thursday after, live. So thank you.